is what we're doing today, or this afternoon. And I've been writing up a few things, and one of the things that I do, and I know that a lot of you guys like to have everything in, so you can look at it and read it and learn it. There's so many different ways of learning when you're on courses. But because it's yoga, I really feel that from experience and from running previous trainings, that I think it's important that you experientially learn before you learn, from conceptually. So that's the reason sometimes that I do things and afterwards then I'll go, right, and here's all the stuff. Because I really want you to feel it before you, if you look at some of the stuff that I've given you and then we do it, there's a pre-conceptualized idea of what it should be or what it could be or what it's going to be. And I want you to come from a place of just being where you're at and feeling it and experiencing it. So then when we go over it more from a conceptual perspective, it can all come in together. Okay, so I've written quite a few things that I'm going to share with you, but it's a step-by-step process, so hopefully you'll have everything you need by the end of the course. So let's speak about 8 essentials of restorative yoga. I did pop into your Facebook group just some handy tips on how to teach restorative online, because online yoga is very different. It's a different concept to teaching anyway, but restorative, especially when you've got all these props going on. So it's actually just about allowing your students to take responsibility for their own nurturing. And that's not just by passing the buck. It's actually helping your students to become empowered within themselves, so that the more that they can give themselves love, they can give love back and give love out in that sort of sense. So restorative yoga is basically countercultural. So our culture, Western culture, is built on how productive we can be, how much we can achieve, and how we can keep achieving. And I'll put my hands up. I'm always busy, figuring out and it's all more about how to evolve and how to improve myself so I can be there for my people. But yeah, sometimes you just need to be, less doing and more being. And so, I have to listen to my own stuff too, embody what I teach. So I'm very aware of that. So it's just about sitting back and listening to yourself and your inner teacher. So it can feel sometimes living in this planet right now as if nothing is ever enough. We can even observe this within the yoga community. So if you've ever gone to, I always like to refer back, I'm not anti-Ashtanga. I trained as an Ashtanga teacher years ago, and I do enjoy a wee Ashtanga class, although it's not so good for my joints being an older person and being a Vata. But if I'm feeling tamasic, Ashtanga is good. But going to power yoga, vinyasa yoga, any of these ones, there can be very much about this striving for a bigger practice, a more advanced practice, and the strain to push your body towards extreme positions. You see that all over Instagram, workshops to do this and workshops to do that, to get your body to do all these different things. And you see that even, there's a teacher, I can't remember his name, but he teaches quite, a lot of his Instagram pictures is his head's behind here, but then he speaks about his pain. He comes from a pain perspective, and it does make you think, well, maybe you should like back off with sticking your leg around your head and work with, but that's not coming from judgment, that's just coming from being an observer. But if you can do that, do it. I love one of my favorite postures is Pinchu Mayurasana. I love forearm balancing. I love going upside down. I love these ones because if you've got students that are intermediate or advanced in their asana, you can teach them far apart about yoga for mental health perspectives, because some of these things are releasing fear. You know, so forearm balances and upside down stuff, wall work things release fear, you know, and I have been drawn to these. I'm not as much recently, but yeah, I've always been drawn to the ones that people are scared of. And so I'm not judging the more advanced postures, because I enjoy doing some of them. I would love to do some of them too that I can't do. But it's not about that, okay? So it's not about striving to get here and here and here, because it can eventually lead to pain, okay? So you get books and things where you can learn to do something in a weekend. Now, it shouldn't be, you know, it should be a systematic process up to the individual. And some people might manage to get somewhere really quickly in that time, but most people need to experience, sit back. I know that there's some people, you know, that just now, because of the way things are sitting back and choosing not to do some of the lives because they're practicing self-care. And that is yoga. That is yoga by being aware of where you're at and doing the best you can with no judgment. So our culture promotes a never-ending amount of doing, and restorative yoga is the radical counter-cultural experience of simply being. So there is an effort required to turn up for the practice, to engage in the practice, but essentially it's a process of surrendering. It's an active letting go, of yielding, which leads us to the first essential point of restorative yoga: yielding. Okay, so to yield is to surrender. In restorative yoga, we actively or consciously surrender our attention to the force of gravity. We keep relaxing and softening throughout the practice, and it is in fact delightful, because for most of us, letting go of tension brings great relief to our body and to our mind. Due to this yielding being an active process, restorative yoga is not about collapsing into each posture, as we might slump into an old armchair. Instead, yielding allows us to be in a clear and dynamic relationship with our environment, so that we're very present to the softening of stress and tension, present to what may be revealed by letting go. And that's a scary thing. This is what makes restorative yoga almost more advanced than some of the advanced, because this is going into the deep, deep, deep stuff that we're too busy doing so we can hide from that sense of things and not have to look at it. So yoga may be seen as a practice of revelation, and by practicing yoga, we may reveal what is obscured by our stress. A lighter, softer, more energized, and a clear, heart-centered self. So let's look at number two. And number two is cellular breathing. So there's a beautiful relationship between yielding and breathing. So as we learn to actively release tension, our breath may naturally become freer and more at ease. And it returns back to a more natural flow, a relaxed breathing pattern. And it's very enjoyable when our breath is allowed to flow unimpeded through our body. So when I talk about breathing, so I'm not talking about inhalation and exhalation. At a more internal level, a cellular level, our body breathes. In fact, it's our cells' need for oxygen and nutrients that ultimately drives our breathing process. So with this emphasis on conscious, deep relaxation, restorative yoga invites fuller respiration at a cellular level. Healthy cells which breathe fully are vital and alive. Where breathing is restricted, cells struggle to function efficiently. And in areas of chronic tension and contraction, cellular breathing becomes restricted. So as a teacher of restorative yoga, a mainstay is of facilitating students into an experience of their cellular body, of cellular breathing. It's one of the most nourishing practices for the body and so very restful and rejuvenating. So Donna Farey once said, an hour's worth of conscious, sustained cellular breathing may be the pinnacle of a year's practice of yoga. It's a fascinating statement to make, at once boldly debunking the myth that advanced yoga is about mastering complex physical postures, while directing students towards a subtler, more refined practice. So if you take this cellular breathing and this sustained cellular breathing and turn it to more the tantric perspective, this is us applying our, removing the prana, the attention of the prana to specific places and breathing into that specific place. But it's not just breathing into the place, you're taking the attention there too. So this morning, your practice was really, we were trying to work with some cellular breathing there, taking your mind out of your head into your heart. And then we took it down. We were really trying to take some of that pranic energy, the cellular breathing, into the pelvic bowl, because it was a menstrual practice. So by bringing that awareness and attention there and breathing into it, you are opening up in a more cellular way, because that's where your breath is holding on to the pranic energy. So, and that's where all your cells are going to be invigorated and enlivened. And this is where we speak about the illumination of ourselves and the healing inherent intelligence of universal healing energy. Okay. So I could go on forever. I'm sorry about that. Let's move on to number 3. So it's about using props intelligently and mindfully, okay, and honestly and authentically too. I think I really need to pop that one in, because you guys as my students know that I'm not. I use props, but I don't use them all the time to teach. But knowing how to use them and knowing when to use them is the intelligently and mindfully practice. So when you're in restorative yoga, you're not meeting your props. You're not bringing yourself to your props. You're bringing your props to meet you. Okay, remember, that's something that is very important, so that instead of, if you're in Supta Baddha Konasana or Supta Virasana, and yeah, you're all propped up in your knees and your hips, but your arms are like flopping out, and yeah, it feels good because you've got really good heart opening. But eventually, because it's a long pose, the joints and your connective tissue are going to start feeling more stressed, and your body's going to start doing more work there. So really trying to, this is where, that did seem strange perhaps for some of you when, I was started to teach you the armchair shavasana, and some of them saying put cushions up here. So make sure you are supported in the arms too. If you're doing a heart opening restorative practice, you're not letting, that's more a type of yoga where you're stressing the joints and you're working to open. You don't want to be working to open. You want to, it's a gentle heart opener, but there's no work involved. So you need to support here as well. Okay, it's important. So good restorative yoga, it's not to say that good restorative yoga is not challenging. An hour's worth of cellular breathing demands great presence and attention. And it really helps when we set our restorative postures up really well. So as the resulting ease of being means our attention and focus won't be distracted by discomfort. So this isn't about getting comfortable with our discomfort. That's like we're stepping. So if you've been studying yin and you've been studying tantra, you've been studying hatha and ashtanga, it's like taking off all these different yoga hats. And going, oh my God. So yoga, we have the sutras, we have Bhagavad Gita, we have the philosophy, and they're all to be applied, the yamas and the niyamas. But when you're teaching specific lineages or specific types of yoga, you need to pop on that hat. So you've got your restorative yoga hats on today, okay? So it's important to learn about setting up the props with precision and intelligence. And I never proclaimed to be an expert on props. I wasn't. One of my teachers, Vidya, who is the owner of Frog Lotus Yoga, she was originally an Iyengar teacher, so that's where she's got, you know, her the alignment and the foundations and working with the props. But then she started studying with Anna Forrest, which was Anna Forrest was basically born with disabilities, and her type of yoga is so strong. If anyone's practiced Anna Forrest or have done anything with an Anna Forrest teacher, a little bit like Baron Baptiste as well, that style of yoga, powerful, but you're really bringing into that empowerment thing. So, and then she kind of took herself into different ways. So you can find, you might have an Iyengar background, and so restorative yoga might come really easily to you. For me, I found that anytime I've gone to an Iyengar, because I'm open to all different styles, so anytime I've gone to an Iyengar workshop because I'm interested, or I've been in a class and they use props, I come out of my head and I come into my head and start going, oh my God. So I've got to let go of that. And I've done that by really practicing a lot of restorative at home by myself. And this whole COVID situation has brought me to really practice quite a bit of restorative as well as yin. So I'm actually okay. I don't reject my props anymore. So I'm not averse. I've dealt with the cliches of the prop situation, and hopefully you guys might manage that too. You're here, so I don't think props is a problem for you. But because I know what works for me in my body, that's what I've been teaching you guys. But because I'm not an advanced Iyengar practitioner, because restorative comes from Iyengar, I have posted some just a few little videos on how to use various props that might help you as well. But as we go along in the classes that I'm teaching, I'm trying to give you different variations of what to do in each pose. So hopefully that's working. And it's really about, there's no like, oh, you're holding that prop wrong, you're doing that wrong. It's really about using what you have to make yourself comfortable. It's not about having the best bolster and oh, look at the way she's placed her bolster. She's better, she's the best, you know. So don't worry about how rubbish you feel you're doing it. As long as it feels good. If it's uncomfortable, it's like getting into Setu Bandhasana. If you're using a block, it should actually make you feel more supported, as opposed to, oh my goodness, this is rubbish. How much longer? Look at everyone else. They seem to be enjoying themselves. And I have been one of those students in the past, you know. So this is where I understand. Yeah, you're like rummaging around with your prop. It's all sore and everyone's saying how juicy and lovely it is. And you're like, what the hell? So don't struggle through it and don't worry about what everyone else is doing. Move the prop. And if the prop doesn't feel good, don't use that one. Use something else, you know, and use something that makes you feel supported. If you're uncomfortable, it's not restorative. So postures should be modified to suit each individual. So someone with a sore, tight neck and shoulders will have a different setup to someone who doesn't. You know, a prop that's moved a few centimeters here or there can make a world of difference. So there's different places, you know. I found that there's in a supine twist that I really love to have a rolled up towel or blanket really along here, because it really helps keep my neck supported, because I have a lot of neck pain from having a broken neck, obviously. I don't tend to have so much neck pain in the summer. It's when it gets cold and wet, and every year it's getting worse. Oh. So yeah, so it's about setting yourself up, or setting your students up, so making sure that everyone's okay, because one setup will not be the same for everyone else. So giving people almost the autonomy to figure out for themselves what works for them. And this is probably the joys of online. There's a lot of people that don't take responsibility for their own happiness, in a sense. They come in and they want to be propped up and told what to do, and then they can just lie there and they go, oh, that was great. But they've not taken any responsibility for their own happiness, in a sense, and they will carry on doing that off the mat. And that's just the way some people are, and it's everyone has different personality types. But if you're at home alone and you're doing a restorative, you're the only one that's going to be supporting yourself there, and it teaches you to be able to support yourself in a nurturing way off the mat too. So it's actually, again, quite empowering. So you can treat each posture as an inquiry. So how do we set up to offer profound support and optimum comfort? So with this inquiry approach, we remain present in the moment, self-adjusting along the way. The same posture today may require a slightly different setup from last week. Thus, we create a practice which is responsive to what is being presented in each moment, always moving us towards greater balance and ease. So it's a great way of allowing you to accept where you're at that moment, and to understand that every day is different, and every day you may need a little bit more, or maybe you don't need as much. Okay, so then number 4, impeccable standards of comfort. So it's about insisting on getting your students to insist on impeccable standards of comfort for themselves. So you're not going to be wrestling about with your blocks, as I said. So you're looking for ultimate comfort for all your body systems, your nervous system, muscular, skeletal, and organ systems, the fluid in the body and so on. So, and this is the fluid in the body is one of the most important things. This is your ojas. So this is for your immune system. This is the elixir of the gods, soma. So making sure that everything is just, you can start creating magic by just being in a restorative pose. How amazing is that? So restorative yoga's profound effect on the autonomic nervous system is its crucial element to its power. So modern day stressful living means that for most of us, our sympathetic nervous system is constantly firing without any real opportunity for quieting. So we're constantly in a state of fight or flight. Restorative yoga is a perfect antidote, and with emphasis on deliberately slowing down and optimal comfort and ease, the practice activates the parasympathetic nervous system responsible for resting and digestion, restoring easy breathing, lowering your blood pressure and your heart rate, relaxing tension and bringing greater balance. So in support of our joints, no joint should be left hanging in space. So, like I was saying with the supported Supta Baddha Konasana, the arms should be supported by blankets or cushions as well, so you don't want to have elbows dangling in midair. You don't want to have anything dangling in yoga. So while this may initially give more sensation of opening across the shoulders if your arms are dangling, the sensations might become quite intense. So the weight of the bones pull the arm away and away from the shoulder socket. Okay, and there follows a response from the nervous system and surrounding body tissues that create stress and tension around the joint to hold on. And that's just what I was talking about earlier. So the aim of restorative yoga is to induce rest and ease. Yes, the postures may gently open us to encourage greater energy flow, but this can best be achieved by sending a message of comfort, safety, and cohesion to the body. So when every joint is beautifully supported, the body receives this as a message of kindness and responds, I'm safe to soften and safe to relax. So in this way, our yoga practice becomes an engaging and responsive dialogue between our body and our mind. So this is so effective, and not only on our physical and energetic levels, but also on our emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. So restorative yoga holistically works on all of our koshas. So working with the koshas might be something that you want to take further as well, because that would be a great one for holistic health and holistic mental health, working with restorative yoga and the koshas. Always having ideas for different workshops, but never having time to do them myself. So popping these ideas onto you guys, because you're all great teachers. So from here, we're going to go into number 5, which is why sequencing. And don't worry, we're going to speak about sequencing this afternoon as well. So while we can practice these restorative postures separately or towards the end of a general class, a whole extended session of restorative yoga can be immensely beneficial, consciously giving all the body systems the time to relax back towards refined balance. So when we practice such an extended session, we should be aware that the sequence we practice the postures in may have different effects. Sedating, rejuvenating, affecting the flow and direction of energy, and so on. So remember, I popped that little table of the biomechanics and the energetics of asana, more for vinyasa krama, but it does help because it's a different setup for posture groups for restorative yoga. But just bear in mind the different asanas that could help with your practice and what they might do for you, and also the different the breathing as well, or your shavasana, your guided shavasana, or your yoga nidra, or if you're wanting to bring meditation into your practice as well. So it all should kind of flow in together. So there should be, instead of just generalizing restorative yoga, there should be a bhav, or a theme, or a reason for why you're doing what you're doing. Again, you're not just throwing lots of poses together to make a brown class. Okay, but it's actually more simple. Restorative yoga is far less complex than any of the practices, because there's not very many of them, and you're just putting them in to allow you to, to really soak into your own energetic juices, in a sense. So Judith Lassiter, so she's the person that created restorative yoga. So she suggests that any well-sequenced restorative practice should include at least one inversion to help counter the effects of gravity. So she means more, so I teach my 200-hour guys Krishnamacharya's way, that there is only 2 inversions, which is headstand and shoulder stand. And I wouldn't say in a restorative you're going to teach a headstand, but there is supported shoulder stand. And the inversions for restorative yoga, I would say they're passive inversions, and it would be the ones that are mentioned for restorative is passive, the Viparita Karani up the wall. That's legs up the wall posture, and supported shoulder stand, and also they consider supported down dog as well as a inversion in restorative. So it's almost like I feel like I have to take off these hats because I'm going on, this is what you do when I'm teaching the 200 hours, when I'm teaching yin, this is what you do. But it's important to know, I think you need to know the foundations before you can grow. Once you've figured out, well, that's what you're supposed to do, then you can make it your own instead of just making things up as you go along. I think knowing the rules, and then you know how you can get around them without breaking them too much. You know, it's a bit like what you do on the mat and coming off the mat. I'm kind of like, I like to adhere to the rules, but then I like to be a little bit naughty as well. So naughty yogis always have more fun. Says me hanging about with my cats. Inside, I'm having a great time. Okay, so yeah. Such a weirdo. Okay, so essentially, sequencing postures comes down to practicing safety, creatively, and responsively. So you want to be safe, creative, and you want that there to be some sort of, so you want to do it so that they feel something afterwards. It's like there's some sort of reason for it energetically, I would say. So you need to be able to truly understand yoga asanas, how they work and what their effects are, how they relate to each other, so that we can practice it in an order that makes sense for our particular being. So in this particular moment as well. So hence the reason we did the practice for self-healing and then universal healing. We were really bringing awareness into the body of different asanas and what they do for us. I didn't pop in many back bends because we don't really restorative yoga, and also even if like with depression, you would not be putting in loads and loads of back bends. I think with depression, you'd still want to uplift them, but you would be like the gentle heart openers, but you'd be working more with lateral stretches and extensions to lift. And we're going to do a little Kundalini session in the morning for that sort of for that sort of yoga for mental health, and in that way where we lift ourselves in a way that's not too energetically too much. We just really don't want to bring that into our bodies. So and then for anxiety, yeah, we're working with forward bends and twists as well. So and then with restorative yoga, there is hip opening section or group as well. So with Krishnamacharya, we kind of like the group that I put in the table for, there isn't hip openers because I teach according to the postures of how they're related to your spine. We're not with restorative. This is about what it's doing to your body in general, as opposed to what we're not really working with Sushumna as much in that sense. Okay, so number 6. So we had wise sequencing, number 5. Number 6 is sustainability. So by emphasizing impeccable standards of comfort and wise sequencing, we may embody sustainability in our practices. So in setting up our postures, we may ask ourselves whether we can stay in the pose for an extended period of time without discomfort. Optimal ease means we can sustain the practice for longer. The benefits gained from restorative postures are enhanced with time spent in the postures. For example, spending 25 minutes in a comfortable, supported, reclined, bound angle will be more beneficial than 5 minutes in the same posture, which is set up to give stronger sensations. So number 7, you're going to create smooth transitions and neutral sensations. So in service to sustainable practice, we can set up our restorative yoga postures in a way that creates smooth transitions in the flow of our body. As we position ourselves, we may establish gentle undulations, our body like a languid rolling river, which encourages energy flow through relaxation. There should be no excessive drop or incline along the lines of the body. So this is a key point. As yoga practitioners, many of us love moving our bodies, stretching and strengthening ourselves. We love the sensations of all this movement, and that is all fine and necessary. It's satisfying to connect into the body and delight in the sensations of it all. Yet we can go further. We should be aware that yoga is a tradition that spans thousands of years, and we have the blessed opportunity to drink deeply of its offerings. However, we may be caught by attaching only to the strong sensations of practice, even practicing in a way which only brings greater and greater physical sensation. So living in our computer-orientated virtual world has disconnected us so much from truly inhabiting our body that when we do attempt to connect, it's in a harsh and severe way. So in restorative yoga, we may counter this cultural tendency by leaning our practice towards neutrality. We may cultivate an attitude of real contentment, santosha, with less sensation, and instead encourage our healthy curiosity towards more neutral sensation. With quieter sensations, we may be drawn into an inner space and explore our internal landscape. Yoga may draw us into subtler experience, a beautiful inner journey towards our true nature. So number 8, being true nature. So it seems somewhat lost in much of modern yoga, the original purpose of practice, to return us to a self-realization of our innate true nature, our original wholeness, completeness, and goodness. With its emphasis on profound rest, we have the opportunity in restorative yoga to move into the quieter practices of yoga. Yoga asana does not have to be separate from the other limbs of yoga. Pranayama, enhancing the flow of the vital life force energy. Pratyahara, sense withdrawal, or balancing the senses. Dharana, concentration or one-pointedness. Dhyana, meditation. And samadhi, self-realization. Patanjali presented us the eightfold path as limbs rather than stages or steps, and they intertwine like branches of a tree supporting each other. They may all be present in our practice. In the quietness of restorative practice, we may tune into our breath, even on a cellular level. We can relax the senses so they may be more in balance with how we interact and receive the environment around us. We can learn to focus our attention and sustain that focus throughout the practice, and finally arrive simply and perfectly in the moment with a remarkable acceptance, presence, and responsiveness to this moment. It becomes a graceful relaxation back into our true nature. This is the culmination of a wise and mature yoga practice. And practice is the appropriate word. We may allow the beauty of yoga to draw us back in again and again, day after day, year after year, with the promise that these rewards are guaranteed. So here's a beautiful quote that can be used at the end of your, I've written all this down and I'm going to share this with you. So it's a Celtic blessing that can be used at the end of Shavasana or the end of your practice. Deep peace of the running wave to you. Deep peace of the flowing air to you. Deep peace of the quiet earth to you. Deep peace of the shining stars to you. Deep peace of the infinite peace to you. So that's the 8 essentials of restorative yoga. Let's speak about the posture groups. And I've written this down as well. I'm going to share this in the group as well. So there's 6 posture groups, but there's no hard and fast rules, like big style rules here. There's different types of restorative yoga teachers, but my teacher trained with Judith Lassiter, and Judith Lassiter is the person that created it. So I'm teaching you from my trainer's perspective and my teacher's perspective. But you can find so much weird shit on the internet, actually. But I don't want you to go off and do weird shit. Be authentically yourself at first. So figure out, build the foundations, and really work with who you are as a teacher and in your practice, and what you want to share from that. I think that's the main thing. So these 6 yoga posture groups, I've given you a few, underneath them I've given you a few examples to use, but these aren't all of them. So don't think, oh, just because I've only put 3 in the heart opening restorative postures, that's the only ones you're allowed to use. There is other ones, but these are the kind of the main ones that are, the ones that are mainly used, that you can use. So it's just to help you for sequencing and building up your own classes and practicing and teaching. So group 1 is heart opening restorative postures. And these are Supta Baddha Konasana, Supta Virasana, and bridge pose as well, Setu Bandhasana. And then group 2 is forward bending restorative poses. So that would be supported child's pose, a supported Prasarita Padottanasana, wide-legged standing forward fold, supported a cross-legged forward bend, supported Paschimottanasana. And then group 3, you've got hip openers. So that would be, we did this one earlier today, supported Upavista Konasana and supported pigeon. And then group 4, passive inversions. So Viparati Karani, legs up the wall pose, supported shoulder stand, and supported downward facing dog. Group 5, twists and laterals. So it's just interesting how they've been just stuffed in together, because they do different things, but I would say you're not going to be doing loads of this sort of stuff. It's more lengthening along the side body in a supine position and twisting round. So it would be the twisted like child's pose. So yeah, so it's not there's not many, like you're not going to get Utthita Parsvakonasana or Utthita Trikonasana in a restorative. So I think that's why they've been popped in together, because they're very different energetically. Okay, so it depends what you're going to do with your asana. So a supported twisting child's pose. So we've done that. I think we're practicing. Are we practicing that? We're not practicing that tonight, but we did that in the first one. But we will probably do it again tomorrow. Or a supported side lying stretch. So so that's just propping yourself up, lying on your side. That's where you get the towel and you get everything just all propped up, lying on your side. Yeah. Okay, and then group 6, relaxation postures. So it's just different ways of shavasaning. So armchair pose, just propping yourself up, like you're on a nice armchair, prop your arms up, your legs up, everything's up. We also did chair shavasana earlier today, which is like just, and it's really good for menstrual health as well, and it's good for fatigue. So just taking your calves to sit on a chair. So you're in shavasana, but your legs, your calves are resting on a chair. Chair shavasana. It's as simple as that. But then we also did yesterday for women who do too much. They could be men who do too much, and maybe being a bit sexist there. But because it's an all women group, I'm not necessarily being too sexist. I want to work with you guys as a group. But you might have found the Shavasana where you had the bolsters, 2 bolsters or all the cushions up against the wall, and you had that connection of your feet to the wall, and that support a bit higher on your legs gave you that sense of being held and grounded. So there's different ways of doing Shavasana. It's like being creative with your props and feel it. So you really need to do quite a bit of practice in your own, get yourself all set up with all your props and figure out what really feels right and what feels right in that moment. What do you want, what works and what doesn't work together. You know, what kind of counter pose works. You don't necessarily have to do too many counter poses, but it's about sometimes having a bit of a rebound as you would do in yin, but not so much about listening to the rebound, because you're almost, there shouldn't be a rebound because you've just been actively relaxing. So instead of listening to the rebound, you know, our thing today, we went from Supta Baddha Konasana into Supta Virasana, and then we came up and just sat. So it was supine Supta Virasana. So we wanted to sit up into Baddha Konasana just after doing that intense Supta Virasana, just to kind of rebalance. And we weren't there for so long, and it wasn't to feel the sensations as such. It was just to, you know, allow the energy to just really move around there in a non-active way. It was more about awareness and being settled with where you are. Okay. So that's the restorative yoga posture groups. And then we're going to speak about sequencing. So basically, you could start with some calming breathing practices, or you could start with setting an intention. You might even want to start in Shavasana. It depends on what is the intention for the day. So today, because we were working with menstrual health, I realized I really wanted to work with the mudra, the yoni mudra, which is, you know, which is related to the female, I don't know what I'm going to call it, private parts. So basically that, and I thought it was appropriate, and we were really working with connecting to being open to receive as well. So figuring out if you want to set an intention or get them to go into Shavasana beforehand, read them a poem that is maybe themed on the rest of your practice, for them to maybe feel the resonance of that poem. I'm going to share with you, I'm reading an amazing book right now that it's very much, it's about different mantras or things from different religions that are really powerful that you can use and I find that they're quite powerful to use as, you know, as a teacher for before, after, or during a Shavasana, that it's sayings from the Vedantas and the Vedas, or the Bible, or Kabbalah, or there's quite a few. I'll share that book as well with you. I took some screenshots last night, so I'll have to share them. I just don't want to overwhelm you with all the stuff I'm posting, but that's quite handy to do as well. And you might even want to start, if you've got people that are anxious, you might want to start off with doing some little movements, you know, like getting tension out of their neck, doing some work with that. You're working with just some general moving, so they're getting rid of, you know, so some of the pregnancy yoga practices are really good for people with anxiety. This one is, instead of doing this, that I do with some of my so I've been doing a few one-to-ones with pregnant people, my daughter's friends, and that is great fun. So if they've got a big bump, and they can't really do vinyasas, but they're young and they really want to still move so they can manage to relax because suffering from insomnia. It's called a swooping cat. So you're basically coming forward instead of chaturanga, and then you're inhaling to come back up. And you can sit back into child. So you're swooping forwards and sitting back. So it's actually quite a nice one for them to maybe connect into their breath before practice, and then maybe just getting them to stay in there, and then, you know, like just so swooping cat is a nice little one. So for people with depression, they, you know, it's like getting them to feel that kind of, they don't want to just start straight into moving. So, but anxious people, they've got all this like energy that they want to release. So by getting them to move and start to connect with their breath first in a gentle way, before you start getting them into restorative, you put somebody who's really anxious into a restorative posture, and then they've got to lie there for 5 minutes. They are going to ruminate. They're going to be like, by the end of it, they might even be more anxious because everything's going on in their head. So yeah, we're getting them to do some like gentle movements to connect with their breath. Some of the Kundalini stuff's really good. And Sufi grinding is another one. So just starts to get things to move and flow in your body. So just some of the Kundalini stuff, and the breathing in and breathing out. So a lot of you guys have come to my classes before, and I do start. I start a class quite a lot with some Kundalini techniques or Kundalini kriyas to get you to connect into your body and your energy before we really go delve deeper into the practice. But it's a nice way to connect into yourself. So just getting people to move in that way, if that's for them. So, you know, it's like figuring out, what do you want to do? Where do you want to take it? Who's your target group, in a sense? And if it's a general class, what is the bab and what is the theme? So what do you want to do to hold their space? Okay, so that's you would start off with that. And for sequencing, this is the thing where everyone's like, right, I need to know how, you know, and I'm very much like, yeah, how does that work with that? How would I work that and there, and how would you counterpose? Well, basically, this is dependent on your population, your target group, and their needs. So a general restorative class should be balanced with the spine moving in all directions, beginning with shorter times in each pose and ending with longer periods. If your students have particular issues, you can focus on poses that address their individual needs. I would say you normally, in a restorative, you normally would start in one of the heart opening postures to get them to like open up in that sense. You would tend to work with perhaps you should, as Judith Lassiter said, you should put a passive inversion, at least one of them, into your class, and you should maybe have one of each of these well, in the posture groups in the thing, and you know, like you can work with what feels right. So and that's the thing, if you feel that they're coming out of a pose and the other one might feel a little bit, you might want them to, if you've got people who are a bit more generally fit, sometimes they might want to come into just to balance out, come into downward facing dog after they've come up out of maybe a pigeon, come into down dog, but not for very long, and then move into pigeon. So you can do some poses to, you know, I did a gentle cat cow yesterday with you, because I felt you needed that, that kind of release. So you can put these things in to just generally release. And if I do like a supported shoulder stand, or if I do something that's involved your neck, I will try and counterpose it as well. And I do feel that that's quite important. But a lot of restorative yoga teachers, after doing an inversion, and that's not, they speak of the bridge and down dog as being an inversion. I'm speaking about, you know, shoulder stand, basically. They just say that you should just move your head from side to side after it. You know, if you've got lots of people with really healthy necks, maybe, but I would say, and you don't need to do like Shalabhasana, you know, because that's not a huge, that's not a restorative yoga pose. But as I've said to you all the beginning of the course, if you're going to do any little back bends at all, the back bends you're going to be including is belly down back bends, because they're tridoshic, but they also stimulate the vagus nerve. So I would say, like, if you could even pop a bit of yin in the sense you could put like the Sphinx pose in just after shoulder stand, or just maybe a little baby cobra or something, you know, just to balance the fact that you really have, you know, your cervical spine, it's little wee bones and they need to be protected. You know, you really need to look after that part of your body. Okay, so yeah, so we're working through all the restorative stuff. So what else do I need to share with you before we do our practice? I'm going to just go over a few more wee things, and then we're going to, you know, tomorrow I'll speak you through some of, like, we'll speak you through some of the postures and how you would prop them up. But the focus of restorative yoga is described as alert relaxation, and it's designed to support an increasing ability to experience beingness, a quality of awareness not related to external circumstance they're doing. So while yin in nature, restorative yoga is different from the style called yin, which is designed to stress ligaments, fascia, and bones. So restorative poses are not intended to stretch or strengthen, but they're to release ever deeper layers of tension. So Shavasana and other restorative poses are intended to provide the experience of not doing. However, when the body is not doing, the mind may either become overly active or sleepy, and the challenge is to relax the body and stay mindful and alert. So you can use imagery to help your students relax and go deeper. So Leslie Kaminoff, so he's the yoga and anatomy man, said that every pose you ever master, you're going to lose except one, Shavasana. So that's the pose to master. And that is, if you remember your first yoga class, what was the most difficult one? Shavasana. Because you're like, oh my goodness, I've just done yoga. What do I need to do? Oh, your mind's going, well, it takes you a while until it. So always remember your beginner's brain, what it was like to feel that self-conscious way. And so I find that really helping to, once they're settled into Shavasana, perhaps get doing some sort of breath guidance, or you leading them into something in that sense, if you're going to be in Shavasana for a long time. But sometimes just leading them into something and letting them be in silence. Just make sure you give them that space to be in their postures. You're not going to be chatting throughout the whole thing. It's nice to share things that are relevant to the pose or relevant to the class, or to give them guided breath techniques, but give them time and space, and you know, to really be. Okay, so dependent on the bhav of the class, like today, I guided you into quite an intense yoga nidra. I didn't give you lots of time and space, but it was very much, we were working with this area. And it was the morning practice. I didn't want you to be really so you could cope with the rest of the day. So let's have a look what else I need to share with you. So the following effects may be associated with, what am I speaking about? Legs up the wall. Okay, inner body. I don't want to read stuff out to you that you've already got. You've got a lot of stuff in your I think you've got it all in your manual, so I'm not going to read all the stuff that I've written for you, because you have most of, yeah, restorative or gentle. Some people, there's another thing here. So the line between gentle and restorative as well. It can get blurred, but it seems a useful distinction is that the purpose of restorative yoga is releasing tension versus stretching or strengthening. So gentle yoga is still stretching or strengthening, okay? And restorative is releasing tension, okay? So I would say there is a difference. So just be clear with what you're teaching and what you're giving your students. So I've given you quite a few poses in here. There's some that I wouldn't teach. Some of these have been shared with my with one of my teachers. But there's one that I would say not to do. And it's I think it's in the second page. Supta Dandasana. I would say that's really not very good for your neck. It's not restorative. Don't wrap a belt around your head and hold your legs up by your neck. Please don't do that. So I think next time I didn't properly look. It wasn't until today I was like, oh my God, I forgot to take that picture out. But it's almost like spot the odd one out. Just don't pop a belt around your neck, okay? And hold yourself up with your legs. Okay. So there's some things in here that you can use. I'm going to share some stuff with you. I've got more things I want to share with you. But I think I'm going to let you have a wee break, and then we'll come back and we're going to do a pose. We're going to do some restorative yoga, and this one is for someone with anxiety, but they're also hypermobile, and so they have instability in their SI joint and lower back. Okay, so insomnia, anxiety, and hypermobile. So it's kind of like based on it. So basically it's a case study I did. And some of you guys might have practiced this one with me actually. So it's a case study I did, and it was a university student who was anxious and stressed. But I've added a few different things to it. I've changed some of it around a bit as well. So anxious and stressed, insomnia, hypermobile, so pain in the SI joint. Okay, so that's the case study, and this is the class. So it's quite good to sometimes look at like what type of class would you do if for that, and there'll be a lot of stressed out, anxious, insomniac, hypermobile students in the world, I would say. So yeah, okay, so that's what we're going to do. So remember, get yourself prepped up, but go and have a cuppa and have a break from me speaking at you. Okay, and I'll see you in. Has anyone got any questions before I stop recording? Well, I'm going to stop recording and I'll ask you questions.